Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with SURLEY Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Adamma Okafor was not your typical Nigerian millionaire heiress. Though she had grown up in a sprawling mansion in Ikoyi, Lagos, and had unlimited access to luxury cars, top-tier education, and the finest wardrobes, she was known for her independent streak and her irreverent attitude toward outdated traditions. At 29, she was supposed to be betrothed in an elaborate ceremony to complete an age-old alliance between her powerful family and the equally distinguished Obi family. Yet the last thing Adamma wanted was to be trapped in a marriage she had never consented to. The tension in her household was palpable. Her father, Chief Cyril Okafor, had built a real estate empire across several West African capitals. Over the years, he had forged lucrative business partnerships, none more formidable than the agreement he had with Chief Benedict Obi. The two men, longtime friends and business associates, had drawn up a plan that would merge their assets and families. Adamma was to marry Chief Benedict Obi's only son, Kalu Obi. It was a union that promised to be the talk of Lagos high society, the merging of two of the biggest real estate conglomerates in Nigeria. Every day, journalists speculated about the upcoming wedding, spinning out stories about what it would do for the combined net worth of the two families. Adamma grew weary of the spotlight and the assumptions that she was nothing more than a chess piece on her father's board. Yet, social media platforms brimmed with anticipation. From Instagram to Twitter, everyone who knew the Okafors wanted a glimpse of the bride-to-be's wedding plans, her dress, the ceremony location, even the color scheme for the traditional engagement. Countless stylists, makeup artists, and wedding planners sent proposals, hoping to tap into the flamboyant spending that was sure to accompany the grand event. But for Adamma, these messages and calls were incessant reminders that her opinions seemed not to matter. Despite her rebellious spirit, she did love and respect her family, but she had her own dreams that did not necessarily include a prearranged marriage. In truth, Adamma had never met Kalu Obi. He was said to have spent most of his adult life in the United States, attending Ivy League schools and learning the ropes of his father's multinational construction business. All Adamma knew was that he had recently returned to Nigeria to take up a management position in his father's company, in preparation for marrying her. Rumor had it that he was dashing, sharp-witted, and highly sought after by Lagos society's most ambitious ladies. Some said he was also a bit arrogant, but that was not unusual among the city's privileged men. Adamma despised the notion of family alliances shaped by patriarchy. Her mother, Lady Patricia Okafor, was well aware of her daughter's distress. But in a tradition-conscious household, Lady Patricia was caught between supporting her only daughter and fulfilling her obligations as the wife of Chief Cyril. So, she turned a blind eye, hoping her daughter would eventually settle into the marriage. "It's for your own good, my dear," she would say whenever she saw the frustration on Adamma's face. "Kalu is from a respectable family. He'll take good care of you." But Adamma wanted more than just being taken care of. She had built a successful chain of luxury boutiques all on her own, branching out into Abuja, Port Harcourt, and even Accra in Ghana. She was self-made, and she believed in forging her own path. Against her parents' wishes, Adamma had hatched a plan: sabotage the engagement. She was fed up with the endless wedding talk, the gossip, and the paparazzi following her from one event to another. Her father had insisted that she refrain from any scandalous behavior during the months leading up to the wedding, but she felt she had little choice. If she could cause enough of a stir, one big enough to ruin her perfect image, perhaps Kalu Obi's family would back out. Or, better yet, her own father might relent and call off the union altogether. Late one evening, Adamma found herself sitting in her room, scrolling through social media on her gold-trimmed iPhone. Hundreds of congratulatory messages littered her Instagram page, with every post from her father's official account generating buzz about the upcoming wedding. She felt suffocated. In frustration, she hurled her phone onto her plush king-sized bed. "This has to stop," she muttered to herself. "I have my own life, my own ambitions." I refuse to be cornered into a marriage by men in suits discussing million-dollar deals. Just at that moment, her friend Binta, a rising fashion designer, called her via WhatsApp. "Babe, are you at home?" Binta's voice sounded hurried. "Yes, Binta. Where else would I be?" Adama responded, her tone laden with weariness. "Get dressed. We're going out tonight. There's this exclusive new lounge opening in Victoria Island. Word on the street is that celebrities and top influencers will be there. You need a break from all the wedding fuss," Binta urged. Adama was tempted to decline. She wasn't exactly in the mood for partying. But then she remembered her plan. She needed some bad press. Perhaps a scandalous headline or two about the soon-to-be-wed Adama partying too hard would be enough to get tongues wagging. Anything to send a message to her father and future in-laws that she was not some obedient pawn. "All right, pick me up in an hour," Adama said, her mind suddenly churning with possibilities. An hour later, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the gates of the Okafor mansion. From the tinted windows, Binta waved excitedly at Adama, who emerged from the house in a stylish yet edgy outfit. A fitted jumpsuit with a plunging neckline and glittering stilettos. Her hair, styled in a short bob, framed her face with an air of confidence. The two friends sped off into the vibrant Lagos night, heading for what they hoped would be a night to remember, or possibly to forget. They arrived at the lounge, an upscale venue called the Oasis, complete with neon lights, a red carpet entry, and a queue of fancy cars out front. Paparazzi were stationed nearby, snapping photos of VIPs as they sauntered in. Adama paused before stepping onto the red carpet, scanning for any potential paparazzi or bloggers who might recognize her. She found a few, but the flamboyant swirl of celebrities and the presence of local music stars quickly drew most of the camera flashes. Nonetheless, she knew her face would make it onto a few gossip pages by sunrise. In that moment, she smiled to herself, thinking, "Let them see me living life. Let them talk." Inside the Oasis, the music throbbed with Afrobeats, the latest hits from Burna Boy and Tiwa Savage vibrating through the massive speakers. Confetti periodically showered the dance floor, illuminating the crowd in bursts of multicolored light. Waiters meandered through the throng, holding silver trays of exotic cocktails. Binta and Adama made a beeline for the VIP lounge upstairs, where they settled into plush seats. From this vantage point, they could observe the entire club, neon lights flickering, dancers swirling, and socialites mingling amid the swirl of disco beams. Adama felt a curious sense of freedom surge through her, a rare liberation from the chains of her father's expectations. Yet, she couldn't entirely ignore the glances of onlookers, some of whom recognized her from social media. She imagined the whispers, "Is that not Chief Okafor's daughter? The one who's about to marry Kalu Obi?" A part of her welcomed the stir. If the tabloids picked up on any missteps tonight, it could throw a wrench into her father's carefully orchestrated wedding plans. She glanced at Binta, who was swaying to the music with a wide grin. "Babe," Adama called out over the pulsating beat, "I'm going to find the bar for a top-shelf drink. Something strong." Binta gave an enthusiastic nod, too caught up in the moment to accompany her. Adama descended the spiral staircase back down to the main floor, where she slipped through the crowd, feeling the bass reverberate in her chest. The bar was a sleek, modern counter trimmed with LED lights that changed color in sync with the music. The bartender, spotting Adama, greeted her politely. She ordered a premium cognac on the rocks, ignoring the voice in her head that warned her to pace herself. She desperately needed a thrill tonight, something to remind her she was not as powerless as everyone seemed to believe. As she turned to leave with her drink, she locked eyes with a tall, well-built stranger leaning casually against the bar's edge. His dark eyes shone with an intensity that both intrigued and unsettled her. Adama felt her heart skip a beat. He was undeniably handsome, dressed in a crisp white shirt and tailored black trousers. A gold wristwatch gleamed on his left arm, speaking of affluence without the gaudiness she was used to in Lagos's VIP circles. Their gaze held for a fraction too long, a silent dare passing between them. Little did she know that this chance encounter would launch her life on a collision course with destiny, one that no tabloid, father, or mother could ever have predicted. The music pounded in Adama's ears as she stood there, locked in the stranger's gaze. She felt a peculiar jolt race through her, something she had rarely experienced, an adrenaline rush that was equal parts excitement and danger. Her plan was to cultivate a little scandal, not to lose herself in an encounter with a mysterious man. Yet something about him was irresistible, as though an invisible thread pulled her closer. The stranger was the first to break the silence, offering a small smile. He raised his own glass, whiskey by the look of it, in a silent toast. "You're Adamma Okafor, right?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that somehow cut through the blaring Afrobeats. Her heart sank for a moment, but she forced a polite smile. "Yes. Have we met before?" Her tone was measured, an attempt at casual politeness. She had grown weary of men who approached her simply because they recognized her family name. It usually meant they were interested in networking rather than genuine connection. He chuckled lightly. "No, not officially. But you're quite famous, you know. The tabloids have been buzzing about your upcoming wedding." He took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I guess that's the price you pay for being who you are, right?" Adama felt a jolt of annoyance. He was exactly like the rest, it seemed, another man eager to pry into her private affairs or capitalizing on her fame. Still, there was something about the way he spoke, unhurried and self-assured, that intrigued her. "I suppose so," she said with a dismissive shrug, trying to end the conversation there. Yet he persisted. "I'm Jidenna," he offered, leaning closer so she could hear him better. "I'm a business consultant." Adama noted that he did not mention his last name, which struck her as unusual for a man who had just acknowledged her prominence. Typically, men in these circles liked to flaunt their backgrounds. She eyed him curiously. "Nice to meet you, Jidenna," she said, raising her glass in return. The two stood in silence for a moment, letting the beat of the music fill the gap. In an impulsive move, Adama decided to play along. "Tell me, Jidenna," she began, her voice tinged with mischief, "since you're so well informed, do you believe everything you read about me in the tabloids?" She arched an eyebrow, testing him. He flashed a roguish grin that showed off a dimple on his left cheek. "Of course not," he replied confidently. "The media often spins tales that aren't entirely accurate. I prefer to form my own opinions." "And what's your opinion so far?" Adama challenged, tilting her head. She was aware that she was flirting, that she was treading dangerous ground, but the cocktails and the suffocating tension of her arranged marriage emboldened her. At that moment, risking a scandal seemed like the perfect escape. Jidenna's eyes danced with amusement. "I think there's more to you than what the gossip columns say. Maybe a bit of a wild spirit beneath the polished exterior." His words sent a shiver through her spine. So often, people looked at Adama and saw only the millionaire heiress or the bride-to-be. Rarely did they acknowledge the person underneath. She took a generous sip of her cognac, savoring the slow burn that trickled down her throat. "You think you have me figured out?" she teased. "Not at all," he admitted, stepping closer so that their conversation could remain between them. "But I'd like to find out." The air around them felt charged. Adama's pulse quickened, and she allowed her frustration and longing for rebellion to guide her. "Let's dance," she said, downing the last of her drink and extending a hand. He hesitated momentarily, then set aside his glass and took her hand, leading her toward the dance floor. Under the swirling lights, the two of them moved to the rhythm of the night. Adama couldn't remember the last time she felt so alive and unconstrained, so drawn to a stranger without analyzing his motives. The weight of her parents' expectations momentarily lifted off her shoulders. Maybe, she thought, she could carve out a night of freedom in the midst of all the chaos surrounding her life. At one point, Binta caught sight of them from the VIP lounge above and waved excitedly, obviously approving of Adama's new companion. Adama winked back, feeling emboldened by the knowledge that she was finally doing something for herself, even if it was just for a fleeting moment. After several songs, Jidenna leaned in to whisper in her ear. "Do you want to get some fresh air? The rooftop is quieter. We can talk." His breath against her ear sent a tingling sensation through her. She nodded, and they made their way through the crush of dancers, up a separate flight of stairs that led to the oasis's rooftop terrace. The terrace offered a panoramic view of Victoria Island's skyline. The soft hum of traffic on the streets below mixed with the faint echoes of the club music. Strings of fairy lights cast a gentle glow, illuminating comfortable lounge chairs and potted palm trees. A few other guests mingled in hushed conversations, but there was enough privacy for a quiet talk. Adama took a seat on a cushioned bench, and Jidenna settled beside her. For a moment, they said nothing, just looked out at the shimmering city lights. The warm Nigerian breeze swept across them, carrying the faint scent of salt from the nearby Atlantic Ocean. "So, I gather you're not excited about your wedding?" he asked softly, not prying but stating an observation. A surge of emotion rose in Adama's chest. She wanted to open up about the suffocation she felt, the longing to be seen as an individual rather than a deal sweetener in a business alliance. Yet she hardly knew this man. Still, there was something in his calm demeanor and the sincerity of his dark eyes that made her want to confide in him. "It's complicated," she finally admitted, choosing her words carefully. "I never consented to it. It's more of a business move between my father and my intended groom's father. I'm just a piece in their game." Jidenna nodded sympathetically. "I get it. Sometimes tradition and family pressure can be overwhelming. But you know you have a choice, right? We always do, even if it seems impossible." His words ignited a flicker of hope in her. Did she really have a choice? Her father's demands loomed large, and the entire city buzzed with anticipation for the wedding. As she stared at Jidenna, the idea of being free for even one night began to crystallize into something tangible. Maybe if she created a big enough scandal, no one would want to go through with the wedding. Or maybe she'd gather enough courage to tell everyone how she truly felt. Before she could fully process what she was doing, Adama shifted closer to Jidenna. "I don't want to think about the wedding tonight," she said softly. "Can we just enjoy this moment?" He studied her for a long time, an unreadable expression on his face. Then he leaned in, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a tentative kiss, soft and questioning at first. But as the pulsating tension between them surged, the kiss deepened. Adama felt her heart hammer in her chest, a cascade of sparks dancing behind her eyelids. She lost herself in the moment, her fingers tangling in Jidenna's shirt. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Neither of them spoke, but the connection between them was palpable. All the swirling emotions, her desperation, her defiance, her longing, converged into one unstoppable force. 1,000 warnings flashed through her mind, but she ignored them all. Right now, she wanted to escape, to feel alive, to be in control of at least one decision in her life. Jidenna stroked her cheek gently. "We don't have to stop," he whispered, searching her face for any sign of hesitation. Adama exhaled shakily, her lips curving into a small smile. "Then let's not," she replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Minutes later, they were back inside, weaving through the buzzing crowd. Instead of heading to the dance floor or the VIP lounge, they made a beeline for the exit. When they stepped onto the bustling Victoria Island street, adrenaline propelling them forward, Adama spotted a row of sleek black SUVs and cabs waiting for passengers. A passing taxi slowed down, sensing potential customers. Jidenna turned to her, his dark eyes questioning. "Your place or somewhere else?" Adama swallowed, the reality of what she was about to do sinking in. This was bold, reckless, and sure to create a stir if anyone found out. But she had never felt so determined. "I can't go home," she whispered. "Let's go somewhere else. Somewhere nobody will recognize me." He nodded, quickly helping her into the taxi. As the car pulled away from the oasis, Adama wondered if this would mark the beginning of her freedom or the biggest mistake of her life. She pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the warmth of Jidenna's hand clasping hers, the glow of the city lights whizzing by, and the unfamiliar thrill of choosing her own path, if only for a night. Adama woke the next morning to the faint hum of an air conditioner and the soft glow of sunlight seeping through heavy hotel curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was. The bed beneath her felt different from her plush mattress at home, and the sterile smell of freshly washed sheets reminded her this wasn't her bedroom. Then, in a rush, the memories of the previous night flooded back. The club, the rooftop terrace, Jidenna's heated whispers, and their impulsive decision to escape together. She shifted beneath the duvet and opened her eyes. The suite was stylishly minimalist, with a modern African flair. Bold paintings of Lagos cityscapes adorned the walls, and a carved wooden sculpture stood on a polished glass table near the TV. It wasn't a shady motel. This was clearly an upscale boutique hotel. Jidenna had insisted on taking her somewhere nice when they left the oasis, and it appeared he'd chosen well. Her gaze flickered to the other side of the king-sized bed, where Jidenna lay half-covered by a rumpled sheet. His chest rose and fell in the slow rhythm of slumber, the morning light casting golden highlights across his defined features. In that moment he looked disarmingly serene, and despite her swirling anxieties, Adama felt a pang of tenderness. Then reality struck. She had slept with a stranger. She didn't even know his full name, just Jidenna. How had it come to this? She had never been so reckless in her life. Prior to now, she was always the one planning every detail, analyzing every scenario. And yet last night, something in her snapped. She wanted to feel liberated, to rebel against the stifling constraints of an arranged marriage. Now, she had to face the consequences. Slipping out of the bed, she winced at the slight ache in her muscles. She moved quietly, gathering her discarded clothes from the floor. The reflective glass windows revealed a sprawling view of Lagos Island, tall commercial buildings stretching into the distance, with the bustling Lagos lagoon shimmering under the morning sun. It was a brand new day, and she was still the same Adamma Okafor, yet everything felt different. A knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. Had she really escaped her engagement by throwing herself into the arms of a complete stranger? Would this change anything at all, or simply add more drama to a wedding that was already the talk of high society? She could almost imagine the gossip headlines: heiress Adamma Okafor spotted leaving exclusive hotel with mystery man. The very thought made her uneasy, though she had initiated this escapade as part of a plan to disrupt her father's arrangement. Perhaps she had succeeded in ensuring no respectable family would want to go through with the marriage. But her mind churned with doubt. What if it backfired? Just as she finished pulling on her dress from the night before, she heard movement behind her. She turned to see Jidenna propping himself up on one elbow, his dark eyes blinking in the morning light. A lazy grin curved across his lips as he took in the sight of Adama already dressed. "Morning," he said, his voice thick with sleep. "You're up early." Adama tried for a casual smile, but even she could sense the tension in her face. "Yeah, I have stuff to do," she mumbled, unable to articulate her inner turmoil. She continued scanning the room, spotting her purse on the dresser next to a complimentary fruit basket. Jidenna slowly sat up, the sheet slipping to reveal his toned torso. "Look, about last night," he began, an apologetic note creeping into his voice. "I hope you don't regret it. It was a crazy evening, but—" She cut him off gently. "I'm not sure what I feel," she admitted, hugging her arms around her chest as if to shield herself from the weight of her own decisions. "But I can't really stay. There's a lot going on in my life." A flicker of disappointment crossed his face, but he nodded understandingly. "That's okay. I won't pressure you into anything." He paused, seeming to search her eyes. "We could at least exchange numbers? Perhaps meet again under less intense circumstances?" Adama hesitated. A part of her wanted to keep the connection, as if Jidenna symbolized this fleeting moment of freedom she'd felt. Another part of her screamed caution. She barely knew him, and continuing any relationship might complicate her already tangled situation. Then again, she had no illusions that last night would remain a secret forever. Was it fair to simply vanish and leave him in the dark? Against her better judgment, she retrieved her phone from her purse. "All right," she said, exhaling. "I'll give you my number." She typed it into his phone, which he had fetched from the nightstand. "Just don't post anything on social media, okay?" she added, half joking but dead serious beneath her light tone. He gave a short laugh. "I'm not that kind of guy. You can trust me." Something about the way he said it made her heart clench, Was she trusting a complete stranger now? Anyway, I'd like to see you again, he murmured. She forced a brave smile. We'll see. I really have to go. With that, she picked up her purse, turned, and slipped out of the hotel room before she could second-guess herself. The drive back to Ikoyi was fraught with tension. Rather than call the family chauffeur or risk being recognized in a fancy car, Adama hailed a local taxi. She gave the driver an address a few blocks away from her actual home. She didn't want to tip off any potential watchers that she'd come from a hotel. The city was already awake, with roadside vendors selling fresh fruits and newspapers, and commuters honking their horns in the usual hustle. Billboard advertisements for mobile telecoms and banks lined the roads, and as Adama sat in the back seat, she felt the city's pulse sync with her racing thoughts. She arrived at a corner near her mansion, paid the driver, and quickly slipped down a side street to the large, ornate gates of the Okafor estate. She hoped to avoid detection by the household staff. The previous night, she had made sure to turn off her phone so that no one could track her down or disrupt her plan. Now, turning it back on, she braced herself for an avalanche of missed calls and messages. Sure enough, her phone buzzed incessantly as the missed calls and texts rolled in. Most were from her mother and Binta, along with a few from her father's office. She also had half a dozen from an unknown number, likely Jidenna, but she wasn't ready to think about that right now. She swiftly walked through a side entrance into the mansion. Her heart pounded as she made her way through the marble-floored corridors. "Madam Adama, where have you been?" a voice called out from behind her. She spun to see Okon, the family's longtime butler, approaching with a mixture of concern and disapproval. Okon had practically raised her, and while he was loyal, he also believed in upholding the household's decorum. Adama forced a casual shrug. "I stepped out with Binta. It got late, so I crashed at her place." She tried to sound convincing, but Okon's narrowed eyes told her he wasn't entirely fooled. "Your father is in the study," he stated, his tone cautious. "He seemed worried when he realized you didn't come home last night." The unspoken question lingered. "Did you inform him of your whereabouts?" Adama's heart thudded. "I'll go see him," she said softly, walking past Okon and toward the grand staircase leading to the second-floor study. As she ascended, her shoulders tensed. She wondered what her father's reaction would be. He had always been strict, but this was different. She had been out all night, unannounced, and under the heavy spotlight of an impending high-profile marriage. Still, she steeled herself. Perhaps this was her chance to show him she wouldn't bend so easily to his will. When she reached the study, she found Chief Cyril Okafor seated behind an enormous mahogany desk piled with documents and newspapers. He looked up at her with a mix of relief and sternness. "Adama, where have you been?" His voice was controlled, but she could sense the anger simmering beneath. "I stayed with Binta," she repeated, matching his gaze. "The club was too loud and it got late." Her father's eyes flickered to her outfit, still the same from last night, then to her disheveled hair. He said nothing for a moment, letting the silence weigh heavily in the air. Finally, he spoke in measured tones. "You're aware we are in the midst of planning a wedding that half of Lagos is talking about? Your fiancé is arriving in a few days for the formal engagement. This kind of behavior won't be tolerated." There was a finality to his voice that made Adama's stomach twist. She stared at him, her chin lifted defiantly. "I didn't agree to this wedding," she repeated, her voice louder than she intended. "You and Chief Obi may have some business agreement, but it doesn't mean you can control who I marry or how I live." Chief Cyril's face darkened, the lines on his forehead deepening. "We have been through this, Adama. This alliance is critical. You will do your family duty." With that, he returned his attention to the papers on his desk, effectively dismissing her. She wanted to argue further, but years of respect, and if she was honest, a little fear, held her back. She pivoted and walked out, her emotions roiling. Back in the privacy of her bedroom, Adama sank onto the bed. She thought of Jidenna, of their night together. She wondered if her father would still insist on the marriage once any rumors about her escapades reached him. But what if those rumors didn't materialize quickly enough to stop the engagement? Panic flared in her. She retrieved her phone and began checking her messages, reading Binta's frantic texts. "Girl, where are you? The pictures from the club are all over Instagram. Call me back if he..." A cold knot of dread tightened in Adama's gut. She had courted scandal, but maybe she had underestimated how quickly it would spread. She braced herself, scrolling through social media. Sure enough, a couple of local gossip blogs had posted blurry photos of her dancing with Jidenna, although his face was partially obscured by the club's lighting. One blog caption read, "Heiress Adamma Okafor partying with mystery man days before engagement ceremony." Comments ranged from excitement to moral outrage. She felt torn, relieved that her plan to spark controversy was working, but also anxious about the potential fallout. As she scrolled through the comments, her phone vibrated, flashing an incoming call from the unknown number that had tried to reach her earlier. She hesitated but answered. "Hello. Adama." It was Jidenna. His tone was calm yet urgent. "Have you seen the news?" She pressed her fingers to her temple. "Yes, I have. It's chaos. Everyone's talking about it." He paused. "I'm sorry. I never meant to create problems for you. I guess last night was unexpected for both of us." She sighed, remembering the warmth of his touch, the fleeting sense of freedom. "It's not your fault," she murmured, feeling tears prick the corners of her eyes. "I have some tough decisions to make, and I'm not sure how everything will play out." "I understand," Jidenna said gently. "If you need someone to talk to or anything else, I'm here." "Thank you," she whispered, ending the call with a swirl of conflicting emotions. Little did she know that her life was about to take an even more dramatic turn. In just a few days, the groom she had been avoiding, Kalu Obi, would arrive in Lagos, setting the stage for a revelation that would shake her world to its core. For the stranger she had spent the night with was not simply a random man named Jidenna. Fate had other ideas, ones that would make last night's scandalous pictures look like mere child's play. Adama stood at the entrance of her father's grand sitting room, heart pounding in her chest. Over the years, she had heard countless business negotiations and family discussions take place in this regal space. The chairs were upholstered in plush velvet, and the walls were adorned with framed photographs of her father shaking hands with presidents and dignitaries. Today, however, the stakes were personal and nerve-wracking. She had just been summoned by Chief Cyril, who informed her that the OBs have arrived. That meant her groom, Kalu Obi, was in the building. She straightened her blouse, taking a moment to exhale. She had spent the last few days grappling with the aftermath of her night with Jidenna. The rumor mill was churning faster than ever, her mother had been in tears, and Binta's phone calls were a constant barrage of, "What's your next move, babe?" Worse, Adama had struggled to keep her composure every time her phone buzzed with a text from Jidenna, a man she barely knew but who had somehow ignited an unquenchable spark within her. Now, as she prepared to meet Kalu Obi for the very first time, her mind whirled. She imagined him as a pompous Ivy League returnee with an overblown ego, a typical trust fund kid who believed the world owed him obeisance. The idea of being tied to such a man was repugnant. Yet, a sliver of curiosity gnawed at her. Who exactly was Kalu Obi? Summoning her courage, she stepped into the room. Her father stood near the large bay windows, engaged in conversation with a tall, imposing figure in a tailored suit. She recognized Chief Benedict Obi, her father's longtime business partner. Seated in a plush armchair nearby was a woman elegantly dressed in a lace gown, likely Kalu's mother, Lady Ifeoma Obi. Then there was a young man, his back turned to Adama, standing stiffly by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind him. She could only catch the outline of his athletic frame and the neat trim of his haircut. Chief Cyril spotted her first, his stern expression revealing little. "Adama, come say hello to the Obi family." She swallowed hard and moved forward, greeting the elders respectfully. Chief Benedict's booming laughter filled the air. "Ah, Adama, we've heard so much about you. Finally, we meet in person. Kalu is quite eager to." In that moment, the young man by the fireplace turned around. Adama's vision blurred, a wave of shock crashing over her. She locked eyes with the face she knew so well from just a few nights ago. The man who had introduced himself as Jidenna. the man she'd danced with, kissed under the Lagos skyline, and shared the most intimate moments of her life with. He looked equally stunned. His eyes, the same deep brown that had held her captive at the oasis, widened as he recognized her. Time seemed to freeze. She heard her pulse thundering in her ears, and a hot flush spread across her cheeks. The older adults continued speaking, oblivious to the tidal wave of realization crashing between the two younger people. "Kalu, this is Adama, your bride-to-be," Chief Benedict said, a proud smile on his lips. Kalu, formerly Jidenna, struggled to compose himself. He cleared his throat, stepping forward. "It's good to finally meet you, Adama," he said, his voice taut. Adama felt her father's gaze on her. She somehow forced her lips to move. "Likewise." "Kalu," she managed, voice trembling. Her mind was spinning with questions. Why had he given her a fake name? Why had he shown up at that club knowing they were supposed to be engaged? Or had he been testing her? Betrayal, anger, confusion, and a twisted sense of irony all bubbled inside her. The parents, still unaware of the silent exchange, chatted amiably. Chief Cyril ushered everyone to sit. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. I've arranged for refreshments." Adama and Kalu took seats opposite each other, their eyes locking occasionally in a feverish dance of unspoken words. The grown-ups launched into a conversation about wedding dates, venues, and potential guest lists. Every detail of the marriage seemed to be hammered out without the bride and groom having much say. But beneath the veneer of polite society, Adama's emotions churned. "So, Kalu," Lady Patricia Okafor ventured politely, "you've been in the United States for some time now, yes?" She was trying to break the ice, unaware of the internal earthquake shaking the room. Kalu nodded. "Yes, Ma, I studied business management at Harvard, then worked at my father's New York office. I only recently returned home." His eyes flicked toward Adama, and she felt the weight of his hidden plea. He was silently begging her not to reveal the fiasco they had unwittingly created. Chief Benedict chimed in, patting Kalu on the back. "He's done the family proud, helped secure major investments abroad. Now he'll be heading a branch of our construction firm right here in Lagos. And soon," he trailed off, beaming at Adama before raising his glass of champagne in a silent toast to the upcoming wedding. Adama forced a tight-lipped smile. Her father nodded approvingly, pleased that his daughter's fiancé was so accomplished. But she could hardly breathe, her mind ablaze with the knowledge that this was the same man she had used as a means to sabotage the wedding. Now they were both stuck, unless one of them spoke out and revealed the truth. When the conversation returned to business matters, Kalu seized a chance to lean toward Adama. "We need to talk," he murmured discreetly, his tone urgent. She glared at him, a million questions packed into her gaze. But she nodded nonetheless. When the families paused to discuss something with a house staff member who'd entered the room, Kalu rose, gesturing for Adama to follow. "Pardon us, please," he said smoothly. "I'd like to show Adama the new car I brought from the States." The parents laughed, exchanging knowing glances. They clearly saw this as an opportunity for the young couple to bond. Once outside the sitting room, far from the ears of the elders, Kalu guided Adama into a side corridor. The mansion's corridors were lined with art pieces and marble statues, but neither of them cared. Their focus was solely on each other. Finally, out of earshot, they turned to face each other. "What on earth were you thinking?" Adama hissed, her voice a harsh whisper. Kalu held up his hands defensively. "You believe it or not, I didn't plan for us to meet like that. I honestly had no idea who you were at first." She laughed bitterly. "Oh, so you just forgot to mention you were actually my fiancé? The one I've been told to marry for a deal I never agreed to?" Kalu ran a hand through his hair, his expression pained. "Adama, you must believe me. My father just told me about the arrangement a few days before I came back to Nigeria. I was still grappling with it. I felt trapped the same way you probably do. That night, I went to the oasis to clear my head, to escape the pressure. And then I met you. You said your name, but I thought you were just, well, I didn't connect the dots. I didn't expect the famous Adamma Okafor to be mingling in a club like that, especially so close to our introduction. I used a middle name, Jidenna, Because I didn't want to be recognized. I never imagined you'd turn out to be the same person. A storm of emotions battered Adama. Rage for being deceived mixed with a grudging empathy. She had also tried to escape her responsibilities that night. You could have been honest with me. At any point you could have told me. He exhaled sharply. And ruin the one night I felt free from my father's grand plans? I'm sorry, Adama. If I had known from the start, I would have told you immediately. But you didn't want the wedding any more than I did, right? She bit her lip, tears stinging her eyes. I was trying to sabotage it, she admitted. I thought if I created enough scandal, the Obi family would back out. I never expected. Her voice trembled with the weight of this impossible twist of fate. Kalu reached for her hand, but she jerked away, still seething with confusion. Look, he said softly, we're in this together now, whether we like it or not. I understand you feel betrayed. But we need a plan. Otherwise, our parents will bulldoze us into a marriage neither of us wanted in the first place. Adama's anger flared again. So your grand plan is what? Pretend nothing happened between us? March down the aisle for the sake of business? His jaw clenched. Honestly, I don't know. But let's not make any rash decisions. Give me a chance to figure this out. We'll talk privately, away from our families, and decide if we can find a way out of this, or if there's a middle ground. She studied his face. Despite her fury, she could see genuine remorse and a flicker of resolve in his eyes. As much as she wanted to scream at him, a part of her recognized they were caught in the same web of family expectations. Fine, she relented in a whisper. We'll talk. A wave of relief washed over Kalu. Thank you, he murmured. Let's get back before they suspect something. They returned to the sitting room, forcing polite smiles as the parents discussed wedding color palettes and traditional ceremonies. Neither Adama nor Kalu spoke much, carefully avoiding each other's eyes. Lady Ifeoma giggled at something Chief Cyril said about cultural dances at the reception, while Chief Benedict scrolled through potential venues on his tablet. The days stretched on, each passing minute weighing heavily on the bride and groom, who were reeling from the knowledge that they had unknowingly shared the most intimate of nights before meeting as intended fiancés. Later that afternoon, the Obis took their leave with warm farewells. We'll see you at dinner tomorrow, Chief Benedict announced. We have much more to finalize. Adama and Kalu exchanged one last, tense glance before the door closed. Once the guests were gone, Chief Cyril turned to his daughter. Are you satisfied now? Kalu is a fine young man, Harvard-educated, well-mannered, and from an excellent lineage. This union will be beneficial for everyone. Adama resisted the urge to snap back. Instead, she nodded noncommittally, her lips set in a tight line. She had no energy left for a confrontation. She just wanted to escape to the sanctuary of her bedroom, to digest the shock and figure out her next steps. As she climbed the stairs, her mind replayed the events of the day. Kalu, Jidenna, her fiancé, her one-night lover. The irony was too overwhelming. All she knew was that their next conversation would have to be honest and raw. Could they forge a path that satisfied their parents without sacrificing their own happiness? Or would their families discover the truth behind their clandestine encounter and bring disgrace on both houses? There was no turning back now. The biggest secret of her life was intertwined with her fiancé's, and the countdown to the wedding had already begun. Later that evening, Adama was in her bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan whirring above her. She felt as though her world had tilted on its axis, leaving her unbalanced. She replayed every moment she'd spent with Kalu, Jidenna, the week before, the flirtatious banter, the intense dance, the stolen kisses, and the eventual intimacy. How was it possible that this same stranger was her betrothed, the one she was so determined not to marry? A soft knock at the door broke her reverie. She sat up, hastily smoothing her rumpled blouse. "Come in," she called out. The door opened to reveal her mother, Lady Patricia, a concerned look etched on her features. She walked over, sitting gently beside Adama on the bed. "My dear, are you all right? You seemed very quiet earlier with the Obi family. I know this is all happening quickly, but they're good people." Adama studied her mother's face, noting the subtle wrinkles around her eyes that betrayed years of stress and compromise in a traditional marriage. Something inside her softened. "Mom," she began, but words failed her. She couldn't bring herself to confess the entire truth, that she had slept with Kalu without knowing who he was. Lady Patricia patted her daughter's hand. "I know how you feel about arranged marriages. Believe me, I understand. I was once in your shoes. But sometimes, the path we didn't choose can still bring unexpected blessings." Her gaze drifted to the wedding band on her finger, the symbol of her union with Chief Cyril, a union that had weathered storms and produced children, yet had also demanded many personal sacrifices. Adama swallowed, torn between loyalty and desperation. She loved her mother, but she couldn't simply accept the same fate. "Mom, I feel suffocated. I've built my own brand, my own life. I'm not sure if marriage is what I need right now." Sympathy flared in Lady Patricia's eyes. "I can't force you to do anything you don't want to do, my dear. But understand, your father believes this marriage cements not only business but also social ties. He thinks it will secure your future in ways you can't imagine. Give Kalu a chance," she added gently. "You might find that he's not what you assume." Adama gave a mirthless chuckle. If only her mother knew how far from typical this situation already was. She forced a nod, letting her mother believe she was still just grappling with normal pre-wedding jitters. Once Lady Patricia left, Adama felt a surge of determination. She needed to face this head-on. The next day, Adama awoke to a flurry of wedding-related activities in the household. Wedding planners had begun arriving, scribbling notes about floral arrangements and lighting setups. Servants moved furniture around, testing different spots for decorations. Adama watched it all from a distance, trying to ignore the knots in her stomach. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, a message from Kalu. "We need to talk." "Lunch today? Kana's Cafe, 1 p.m.? Adama typed a quick reply. "Okay. I'll be there." At precisely 1 p.m., she stepped into Kana's Cafe, an upscale spot in Victoria Island known for its fusion of African and Western cuisine. The interior was bathed in natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows, with rustic wooden tables arranged in a casual yet elegant layout. She spotted Kalu seated in a quiet corner, a small table for two. He rose when he saw her, offering a polite nod. Gone was the carefree man she'd danced with at the Oasis. In his place stood a composed businessman, though Adama caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. She slid into the seat opposite him. A waitress approached, setting down menus and offering a bright smile. "Good afternoon. Shall I bring you some drinks to start?" Kalu and Adama exchanged a quick glance. "Just water for now," Adama said. Kalu nodded in agreement, and the waitress disappeared. For a long moment, they said nothing, studying each other across the table. Adama finally broke the silence. "All right, we're here. Talk." Kalu sighed. "Look, I'm sorry for the deception. I really had no clue you were my fiance when we met at the Oasis. But now that we're both stuck, we need to figure out what to do." A wave of anger fluttered through Adama's chest. "We're not stuck, Kalu. We can just come clean. Tell our parents we don't want this marriage. End of story." He rubbed the back of his neck. "That's easier said than done. My father has pinned a lot of hopes on this union. Investors, brand expansions, even rumored political ties. If I back out, I risk destroying a partnership that's been decades in the making. My mother would be devastated. And I'm guessing you feel the same about your family." She raked her fingers through her hair in frustration. "So your plan is to just go ahead and marry me? Pretend everything is normal?" His eyes flickered with conflict. "I don't know if that's the plan. But do you want to see your father's empire take a massive hit? Have both families smear each other in the press? This is bigger than just us. And since we've already, crossed certain lines, perhaps it won't be so bad if we explore a relationship." Heat rose to Adama's cheeks as she recalled that line crossing. She quickly regained her composure. "We barely know each other," she snapped. "How do you suggest we navigate that little detail?" Kalu leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We get to know each other. Away from the glare of the wedding planners and meddling relatives. Take some time, see if we can actually make this work. After that, we still feel it's impossible, we tell our families together. A united front might minimize the damage. Adama hesitated. She hated the idea that her life decisions were so intertwined with corporate interests. But at the same time, she recognized that a unilateral, abrupt move could destroy her father's lifelong achievements and possibly tarnish her own hard-won reputation. Perhaps Kalu's suggestion to test the waters was worth considering. She eyed him warily. Fine. We'll try. But no more lies. And no playing the controlling fiancé. I won't tolerate that. Kalu offered a slight smile. No controlling fiancé behavior, I promise. In fact, let's start with an understanding. We remain ourselves. No faking affection in public unless absolutely necessary. But we also be open to the possibility that we might, in time, find a genuine connection. He said the last part softly, as if testing her reaction. Adama studied his face. She thought of the spark they'd shared that night. It hadn't just been physical attraction. They'd connected on some level, bonding over their mutual desire for freedom. Could that foundation lead to something real? Cautiously, she nodded. All right, deal. But the moment I feel like this is suffocating me, I walk away. Fair enough, he replied, relief evident in his tone. So, how about we start by talking like normal people? I could take you to dinner tomorrow. No parents, no wedding talk, just you and me. She pursed her lips, trying to suppress a grin. That's ironically normal. But sure. Let's see how that goes. They spent the next hour discussing mundane topics. Favorite music, both enjoyed Afrobeats but Kalu had a soft spot for jazz. Hobbies, Adama loved painting, Kalu was an avid chess player, and random life stories. Some tension lingered, but each anecdote chipped away at their hostility. By the time they parted, Adama felt slightly less burdened. Maybe, just maybe, they could approach this forced marriage like two adults, discovering if they had any real compatibility. But fate seldom unfolds smoothly. Later that evening, Adama scrolled through her social media, trying to unwind after a long day, when she came across a new rumor circulating among gossip blogs. A grainy photograph of her stepping out of a hotel room with a man, his face blurred, around midnight on the night she'd met Kalu. The headline read, "Is heiress Adamma Okafor already cheating on fiancé Kalu Obi?" Her heart thundered. The bloggers had somehow gotten a hold of security footage or perhaps phone camera snaps from that boutique hotel. The post was blowing up online, with comments speculating on the identity of the mystery man. Some insisted it had to be Kalu, others claimed it was a secret lover. Adama's cheeks burned with mortification. If this escalated, the Obis might consider calling off the wedding. Her father would be livid, and Kalu's parents would feel disrespected. Her phone buzzed, as though on cue. It was Kalu calling. She braced herself and answered. "Have you seen it?" she asked, skipping pleasantries. His voice was somber. "Yes. My mother called me in a panic, asking if it was true. I think we need to do damage control immediately." Adama closed her eyes, dread weighing on her. "What do we say? We can't exactly tell them it was you, because then they'll know we slept together before even meeting officially. That'd be scandalous for them. But if we deny it was you, they'll suspect me of infidelity." She heard Kalu sigh heavily. "Maybe we say it's all a misunderstanding. That we were meeting privately, something about finalizing business details? That we wanted to get acquainted before the families announced it publicly. It's not the most elegant excuse, but it might keep them at bay." Her mind raced, trying to plug the holes in that story. "It's better than the truth," she admitted grimly. "All right, let's do it. But we have to be consistent." "Agreed," Kalu said. "I'll talk to my parents tonight. You do the same. We'll deny any wrongdoing and claim it was a meeting between us. Let's try to stay calm." Once the call ended, Adama felt as if she'd hopped from one chaotic scenario to another. She recalled her conversation with her mother about unexpected blessings. Could any blessing come from this tangled mess? She doubted it. More than anything, she sensed the hush before a looming storm. The wedding date hadn't even been set, and they were already drowning in scandals and half-truths. Yet, as she stared at the rumor-laden blog page, something else flickered in her chest. an odd, cautious sense of relief. If they managed to spin this so that it only looked like they'd had a private rendezvous, maybe it would ironically quell the scandal she'd hoped to spark in the first place. She wanted to sabotage the wedding, but not at the cost of her personal dignity or the complete downfall of her father's legacy. With Kalu at her side, even under these strained circumstances, she might navigate this crisis more smoothly than if she were completely alone. What she couldn't foresee was that this fiasco was only the prelude to a far bigger confrontation, one that would force her to confront her deepest fears and desires, and which might push her and Kalu closer than either had imagined possible. A month flew by in a whirlwind of wedding preparations, media scrambles, and carefully orchestrated family meetings. To quiet the scandal that threatened to overshadow the engagement, Adama and Kalu crafted a careful statement through their parents. Yes, they had met privately at a hotel, purely to discuss personal matters and get to know each other before the official family introductions. No, there was no secret lover or infidelity. Social media was appeased. Some cynics called it a convenient cover-up, but the majority accepted the official narrative. During that time, Adama and Kalu discreetly dated, learning more about each other's quirks and histories. While they hadn't fully embraced the idea of marriage, they found themselves surprisingly comfortable in each other's presence. He took her to art exhibitions and she accompanied him to networking events. They discovered a shared taste for suya-spiced chicken at roadside grills and a mutual fascination with traveling. They argued, laughed, and steadily built a rapport that neither had anticipated. However, the core dilemma remained: should they go through with the wedding? Both sets of parents grew increasingly excited, discussing lavish party details and planning a grand ceremony in Abuja, at one of the most prestigious hotel resorts. Each day brought fresh evidence of how deeply intertwined their family's business affairs had become. Backing out now seemed impossible without catastrophic fallout. About a week before the scheduled nuptials, Adama received a late-night phone call from Kalu. His voice was laced with an urgency that made her heart flutter. "Meet me at our usual spot in half an hour," he said. "I have something important to say." Their usual spot was the rooftop terrace of a boutique hotel in Victoria Island, not the same one where they had first slept together, but one with a similarly breathtaking view of the city lights. They had chosen it because it was quieter than the five-star hotels and less frequented by gossip bloggers. Adama arrived first, stepping onto the terrace where flickering lanterns cast a warm glow across plush seating. She found a small table near the edge, overlooking the bustling Lagos skyline. Kalu arrived moments later, dressed in casual jeans and a crisp white shirt. There was a tension in his expression that made her pulse quicken. He greeted her with a brief hug, then settled into the seat opposite hers. For a few beats, they just stared at each other, the city humming beneath them. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Our families have invested so much in this wedding," he began, "and despite the madness of how we met, I've grown fond of you." His voice quivered slightly. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified of marriage, but I've realized I don't want to lose what we've been building. You're the first person who's seen beyond my father's expectations, who's let me be human instead of just Kalu Obi, the Harvard-educated heir to a construction empire." Adama's chest tightened. She reached out and placed her hand over his. "I feel the same," she admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Before you, I felt so alone. Everyone treated me like a golden ticket to business connections or some high society trophy. But you saw me as Adama, an artist, a stubborn entrepreneur, and a flawed human being trying to navigate an impossible situation." Kalu laced his fingers through hers. "We're set to be married in a week. My question is, will we be marrying for our family's sake, or because we actually want to be together? I think we owe it to ourselves to answer that truthfully." Silence fell between them, fraught with anticipation. The flickering lanterns highlighted the raw intensity in their eyes. In that moment, Adama felt every argument, every wave of attraction, every pang of anxiety and longing swirl inside her. She remembered how they first met, both of them searching for a way out of obligations, only to stumble into each other's arms. Fate's twisted sense of humor had thrust them into an arranged marriage, but now they had a say in whether they truly wanted it. "I want to try," she said at last, voice shaking. Marriage is a huge step, but I don't want to keep running. And I don't want to lose you. The admission startled her as much as it did him. She realized she meant every word. Kalu's eyes filled with relief. He lifted her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then we do this together. On our terms. The day of the wedding dawned bright and hot, as Abuja's sun seemed determined to bless, or roast, the celebrants. The prestigious resort thrummed with activity, florists arranging vibrant African blooms, caterers preparing mouth-watering jollof rice and grilled fish, drummers tuning their instruments, and elegantly dressed guests milling about. The Okafor and Obi families had spared no expense, ensuring that the event would be the talk of the season. Adama sat in a private suite, surrounded by stylists and relatives. Her traditional attire was a breathtaking blend of modern African design and couture fashion. A richly embroidered lace blouse paired with a regal, flowing wrapper. Gold accessories adorned her wrists and neck, and her geli, a carefully folded head wrap, exuded elegance. Her heart pounded with both excitement and nerves. Binta, her maid of honor, stood by, adjusting Adama's makeup. "My friend," Binta teased, a mischievous grin on her face, "I never thought I'd see the day. Remember when you told me you'd rather die than go through with an arranged marriage?" Adama gave a soft laugh. "Yes, I remember. But life has a way of surprising you, doesn't it?" She looked at herself in the mirror, her expression settling into one of quiet resolve. She had made her choice, to step into this union with her eyes open and her heart willing to explore real love with Kalu. Meanwhile, in another wing of the resort, Kalu paced the floor, adjusting his richly patterned agbada. His groomsmen surrounded him, offering jokes and words of encouragement. Chief Benedict Obi entered to check on his son, eyeing him with a mixture of pride and concern. "You all right, son?" Chief Benedict asked quietly. Kalu nodded, inhaling deeply. "I am." His father clapped him on the shoulder. "Good. This is a big moment for our families, but I also hope it's a blessed start for you and Adama personally. She's a remarkable woman, you know." A small smile curved Kalu's lips. "She is." The ceremony itself was a vibrant blend of old and new. Traditional drummers heralded the bride's arrival, while a string quartet quietly played in the background. Elegant flower arches led the guests' eyes to the altar, where an officiant, a family friend, stood with a wide grin. Adama's heart hammered as she made her entrance, escorted by her father. Though they had clashed so many times, Chief Cyril Okafor beamed with paternal pride, tears glinting in his eyes. The audience of high-profile politicians, socialites, and distant relatives rose, clapping and cheering. When Adama finally reached Kalu, she was struck again by how handsome he looked, dressed in a regal white and gold agbada that accentuated his tall frame. Their eyes locked, sharing an unspoken promise. The officiant began to speak, weaving references to love, partnership, and the significance of uniting two families. Camera shutters clicked incessantly, capturing the moment for tabloids and social media. Yet Adama found herself tuning out the noise, focusing solely on Kalu's face. "Do you, Adamma Okafor, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the officiant asked. She paused, recalling the months of anguish, the night of reckless passion, the shock of discovering Kalu's identity, and the blossoming hope that followed. With trembling lips and a determined gaze, she answered, "I do." When it was Kalu's turn, he looked equally resolved. "I do," he said, his voice steady as he slid a ring onto Adama's finger, sealing their fates and their choice. Cheers erupted. Confetti floated through the air, and Yoruba singers performed jubilant wedding tunes, praising the union. Relatives rushed forward, enveloping the new couple in embraces. Adama caught sight of Binta in the crowd, tears streaming down her smiling face. Chief Cyril and Chief Benedict exchanged hearty congratulations, while Lady Patricia and Lady Ifioma clasped each other's hands, relief and joy lighting their faces. Amid this festivity, Adama felt Kalu squeeze her hand. She turned to him. "We did it," she breathed, half in wonder, half in apprehension for what lay ahead. Kalu smiled softly, leaning in to whisper in her ear over the cacophony of celebrations. "This is just the beginning. Let's see where it takes us." The reception that followed was a grand spectacle. Guests in Ankara prints and designer gowns filled the ballroom, dancing to Afrobeats and highlife music. MCs orchestrated games and speeches, while an elaborate buffet showcased both Nigerian specialties and international cuisine. Adama and Kalu made their rounds, thanking guests for attending. Frequent toasts rang out, celebrating the perfect couple. As Adama mingled, she couldn't help recalling how the entire fiasco started with her intense desire to break free from an arranged marriage. Now, here she was, a newlywed, ironically forging her own path within a union she once despised. She glanced at Kalu, standing across the room with a group of business moguls. He looked back at her, caught her eye, and raised his glass. A surge of warmth flooded her as she returned the smile. Perhaps they really could make this work. Stepping away from the crowd, Adama took a moment to breathe, gathering her thoughts near an ornate window that overlooked the resort's manicured gardens. She sensed someone approaching, Kalu, who had excused himself from the conversation. He joined her quietly, placing a hand on the small of her back. "How are you holding up, Mrs. Obi?" he teased lightly. The way he said Mrs. Obi made her cheeks flush, but she laughed softly. "Exhausted but strangely happy," she admitted. "It still feels surreal." Kalu nodded, his gaze drifting to the crowd enjoying themselves. "Life is ironic, isn't it? We both tried so hard to avoid marriage, and yet fate, plus our parents, pushed us together." Adama turned to face him. The weight of the ring on her finger reminded her of the lifelong commitment she just made. "Maybe it's not just fate," she murmured. "Maybe we had a choice and we chose to give this a chance." He leaned closer, the distant music fading from her awareness. "I'm glad we did," he whispered, kissing her gently. For a brief moment, they were alone in their own world, the swirl of the reception becoming background noise. The bitterness, fear, and rebellion of the past months melted away, replaced by a cautious but hopeful sense of possibility. Stepping back, Kalu offered his arm in a gallant gesture. "Shall we rejoin our guests, my love?" he asked with playful emphasis on the endearment. Adama rolled her eyes good-naturedly but linked her arm with his. "We shall, my husband," she replied in kind, heading back to the throng of dancing and well-wishers. Under the glimmering lights of the reception hall, amidst the laughter and congratulatory voices, a new chapter began for Adama and Kalu. Born out of deception and rebellion, their union now stood on the brink of genuine partnership. Their story would remain a favorite whispered scandal among Lagos high society. Did you know they actually slept together by accident before realizing they were betrothed? But for the couple themselves, that twist of fate had carved a path toward a future they never anticipated, and perhaps, if they nurtured it, real love too. The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.